Welcome to the Piedmont Triad Podcast.
Before I get too old, I'm gonna head down to Muscle Shoals. Baby, you can meet me at the station.
Welcome to another episode of the Piedmont Triad Podcast, where we explore the weird, artistic, and unusual aspects of the Piedmont Triad area of North Carolina. I'm your host, David Locklear, and today we are talking with Brian Daniloski and Ann Everton of the Baltimore, Maryland psychedelic rock band Darsombra. Formed from the bones of the underground rock band Meat Jack, Darsombra emerged in 2006, releasing an extensive catalog of their trans-apocalyptic galaxy rock, and culminating with their 2021 EP Call the Doctor / Night Garden, which presents the familiar prog-inspired galaxy rock that fans around the globe have come to expect from the duo, while also presenting a departure in mood from their previous efforts. And when they perform live, they create a symbiotic audio-video involvement that creates a temporary reality woven by sight, sound, and movement. And live, it is truly a cinematic rock and roll show. Today they talk to us about the recent passing of the Baltimore underground rock legend Dave Sherman, musical experimentation, and the one time where they actually had a minister call their live show a sober acid trip. Sent me you guys' Call the Doctor EP, and I've been listening to it a couple times a week. It's actually very good for me in terms of like when I lay down at night and just trying to decompress my mind. That's like been the perfect soundtrack so far of just getting my head sort of nice and straight, you know.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome.
great. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, no problem. I'm pumped to come see you guys at Monstercade. They're kind of a pretty new club here in Winston. They've only been around a couple of years, but they've been really, really awesome about bringing in a lot of the more underground and lesser-known bands and bringing in punk shows. And it's been real refreshing to have this kind of music to pop around our scene regularly again.
Oh yeah, Monstercade's great. I think we
actually played there, a few times.
I think it was 2019, and then we played there last year too, or earlier this year, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, did you really? I didn't come across that for some reason.
It was a sneak. We went down to Atlanta to see the band Sparks, and on the way back, we figured we'd play some shows to help pay for the cost of gas. So well, very last minute.
And Monstercade's always been really, really good to us.
Very welcoming.
I think we've played there at least 3 times or 4.
I don't know. They've been very, very welcoming for us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I talked to Carlos a few months ago. I did an interview with him, and he's got some interesting stories. He's a pretty cool guy, so I'm glad to hear that you guys have a good rapport with him.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, Winston-Salem definitely is one of those cities for us. It's kind of a home away from home.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are coming around now. About 15, 20 years ago, it was that area, you wouldn't want to go there after dark. It was not a good place to be.
Well, remember, we live in Baltimore.
Oh, right. So you know what I'm talking about.
Totally. Yeah, but we seem like we found some like-minded, freaks in Winston-Salem. So it's just been a great time continuing to come there.
Yeah, we always are singing Winston's praises because everybody up here thinks that Asheville is the most important place in North Carolina. And we say, no, don't forget about Winston-Salem. I could easily see living there. It's a very chill place.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the EP, the Call the Doctor EP. So it's basically 2 songs. It's like Sunshine, Nighttime. What brought those? What was the inspiration for those songs?
Both of them were composed during quarantine. And I think there is a certain degree of isolation, actually, as the inspiration. All the Doctors, the type of song that we wrote and then later learned to play, kind of in an effort to, I don't want to say cheer ourselves up, because there's an energetic, dark quality to it as well, but it's definitely a song that gets us motivated. And I think that was very useful in 2020 because it was very easy to think, are we ever going to go on tour ever again, ever?
Yeah, that was kind of a freaky time, I think, for fans and bands alike, where it was just like, man, did I attend my last concert and didn't even realize it?
Yeah, we were used to touring, a large chunk of the year.
I mean, this upcoming tour is our 26th tour.
Wow.
So we tour a lot.
Yeah, that's just been since 2011. And so we're used to touring a lot, but yeah, we were just like everybody got the rug pulled out from under them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when they were trying to bring it back, even then it still really didn't seem like it was gonna fall through. Like I wasn't real hopeful when they were still trying to bring shows back.
Yeah, when things were starting to come back, it was even then like things still kind of would still get canceled at the last minute.
Oh yeah.
For whatever, so it's been a slow return.
And what did you guys do in terms of, how did you support yourselves? I know a lot of people, they did things online and, some people just went out and got a regular old 9-to-5 practical job. What were your guys' solution?
So our solution was funny because right when all the shit hit the fan, we were on the cusp of a big European tour. We were supposed to go out to Europe for 6 weeks starting April 1st with a slot on the awesome Roadburn Festival out of Netherlands, and then we had another 4-week tour planned for the summer for the U.S. and Canada, and we were working on a South tour for fall, and then everything just went look. And the one thing we did was, when it first happened, we were like basically. The tour we were supposed to do in Europe was supposed to start April 1st. So we got really, and nobody knew that things were coming down till mid-March. And we just started playing a lot of online shows. And that's exactly what we did. Just like you said, we started doing a lot of online shows.
There was more to it than that. We decided to tour our house.
Oh, yeah. We were going to have this.
We played all these different rooms in a house and in a yard. We played on top of our garage, which our neighbors surprisingly enjoyed, which is good.
Yeah.
And even inspired some neighbors to do performances of their own many years later on their roofs.
Yeah. We just basically we can't not play shows, so we're just going to bring it to you live from our house. And we thought a clever thing would be to tour, different rooms of the house. So, rather than play our usual 5 or so shows a week, we just played. We did 2 shows a week for the whole 6 weeks we were supposed to be out on tour, and we would just coming to you live from different parts of the house. We
also have playing parts of the day because we have fans in Southeast Asia as well as Europe and the U.S. So, how can we make this so it's like at 8 p.m. their time zone,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always a fun thing to try to coordinate.
We're lucky enough, we were both technically unemployed because Brian's sole job is booking our tours and playing shows, both of which we couldn't do during 2020. And I have another job as a barber, which, again, I couldn't do for the first few months.
And we're both yoga teachers.
And we're both yoga teachers, although there's no kind of income.
No, we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that for a while either. We had to move those classes online as well.
Oh yeah, we taught yoga online for a year and a half or something like that. We got a whole YouTube channel and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife kind of did the same thing. She's a yoga instructor as well, and yeah, it was kind of like, all right, well, we're gonna figure something out. So yeah, she did the same thing.
Right, and we know teachers that are still just teaching online and people that still just practice online, so I get it. The world shifted really quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think most people are completely, most people who work a regular, typical kind of a job are perfectly fine working from home, but it's like everybody else, we're like, nah, man, we got to get back out on the road. We got to get out of here. We got to do something.
Yeah, most definitely.
So when you were isolated playing this music, it's, you had all of this equipment and whatnot. Did you find yourself maybe experimenting with sounds that you normally wouldn't have probably thought about messing with during this time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a really good question.
Definitely.
Call the Doctor being a great example. Everybody thinks we're wizards with MIDI. We're not. Call the Doctor was our first foray into MIDI. And I do feel like even Night Garden, and really those are two songs from like a 90-minute double album that we've been working on since the quarantine that we're hoping to put out ideally sometime next year. I mean, we say that every year, but we're working on it. And the hard thing is 2022 has not been as energetically slow as 2020. So.
Yeah, it almost feels like this has been the first year where things are actually trying to get back into a groove of normalcy, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Even though all of us are like, why hurry? We learned in 2020, take it easy, enjoy life.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was kind of like, I was trying to enjoy life, but at the same time, I'm trying to get on the phone with my mortgage company and praying to God I don't lose my house there for the first month or two, you know?
God, I know. We were so lucky. I mean, I think inadvertently we have been like subconsciously kind of preparing for something like that for a while.
Yeah.
And so our home, we bought a foreclosure many years ago. So, our house was very affordable and our home situation was like stable, and we had a really bumper crop in our yard, our garden that year. So it's like 2020 was a very surprisingly gentle year to us. I think 2022 actually has been much more challenging. Even though it's been the worst.
I wouldn't agree. Because 2020 had such interesting challenges that
the psychological challenges were next level.
Yeah.
But throughout the quarantine, specifically from like, I want to say March to June of 2020, I think every single day we would say to each other, I'm so glad I'm a musician. I'm so glad I'm an artist. I'm so glad that I have this outlet, because without it, we would be totally screwed.
Oh, I know. I find myself doing the same thing in terms of just, I like writing and I like, doing the podcast and whatnot. And I notice when I find myself in a groove where I'm doing other things, where that outlet's not being fed, I suddenly find myself maybe a month or two in just being anxious and irritated, and I don't know what the fuck's wrong with me,
Yeah, exactly. You have to have the creative release. It's important.
Yeah, it really is. I think people underestimate the importance of that. It's a psychological release.
Totally. And I mean, I hate to say this, but particularly if they don't have any personal creative releases, like no journaling, no strumming on an instrument, none of that, then they really just don't get how important it is. Oh,
I know. It's very important. I wish I had maybe focused on it a little bit more when I was younger. I think I might have had a better mentality at a younger age, but as long as I get there, who cares?
Yes, exactly.
So the Call the Doctor, I was noticing, has a really similar sound to 2016's Polyvision, and is that just sort of the direction you guys are going right now? Because it is kind of different from your earlier stuff in 2005 to now, and I know that artists are always evolving, so I'm just kind of curious if there were any events, besides like the pandemic and whatnot, that have transitioned the sound from 2005 to now.
Yeah, well, the biggest one being when the band was first started, it was just me. It was just a one-man band. I had a metal band I was doing with some other fellows at the time, and like I started Darsombra sort of as a creative outlet for some of my more weirder and ambient and soundtracky kind of soundscapey sort of ideas. And so it actually existed sort of as a one-person band for almost 10 years, and I did tours and everything. And then eventually I met Ann, and
I think I joined the band in 2010.
Yeah.
And then we started touring together in 2011. And when I first joined the band, I was just doing video work, because that's my background. I was a video artist. But then around 2013, a friend convinced me to start performing, even though I was like, well, I got to learn an instrument. So Brian started teaching me what he knew about music, and I started playing synth and percussion and singing with Brian on stage in 2013. So a lot of evolution.
So Polyvision was the first album to feature, somebody else besides me playing some instrumentation, and that's where we had Ann, playing her percussion and synthesizer and stuff. And and then when this band first started too, I think it was a lot more darker and noisier. And I think over time it's gotten a little more it's still heavy at times, but it gets kind of proggy and a little more even goofy at times.
Mm-hmm.
But we still want to keep, we could bring in the dark stuff too. But it's I think it has a more, I don't know, like rounded out vision, because it's not just the dark and the angsty stuff. It's kind of got everything now. So
yeah. And do you still have your other like rock metal project for the real specific dark stuff, or is it Darsombra now?
No, not at all. Yeah, it's just all Darsombra. That band broke up in 2005, and yeah, and I've just kind of never looked back. I've just kind of been enjoying where Darsombra's been taking me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2019 released Transmission, which is like one 40-minute song.
Mm-hmm.
That like kind of encompasses, I think, everything that we do, because it's such a very long song. And the first half of it does have like quite a bit of very dark elements to it, would you say?
Yeah, I think.
Mm-hmm. So you wrote even when you were a teenager?
Yeah, the first half of Transmission is definitely more like a noisier, darker side.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then it sort of morphs into the more, ambient, mellow, everything's going to be okay kind of stuff.
Let's think of it this way. Let's think of the first half of Transmission as like that part of the mushroom trip before you throw up, and the second half is after you throw up. Hey, pure class from Darsombra.
That's a very interesting take on, the tension release dynamic,
I have a feeling no one else has used that metaphor to describe their music anytime recently, at least. Possibly a very clunky and somewhat gross metaphor, but you get the idea.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't misunderstand it. Everybody knows exactly what that feels like. So yeah,
we often have people tell us like this is like tripping. Like when they see our show, or you gave us a trip without the drugs. What did they say at that wedding we played recently? It was like a sober trip.
Yeah, I think the bride's father was like, that was like a sober acid trip.
And the bride's father too was a retired minister. So you're doing well if the minister says it's like an acid trip.
I know. Honestly, I'll take the opinion of an ex-drugged out minister any day. I'll be like, yeah,
Any day of the week, absolutely.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's funny you guys were mentioning how you're from Baltimore, and so when I was looking up some of the people that you guys had opened for, I saw Wino and a couple other people who were sort of native to the Baltimore, the Maryland area. So I wanted to ask you guys specifically about this since you're from around there. You've heard about Dave Sherman passing away recently from Earthride and Obsessed, all those bands?
Yeah, we were sad to hear that. We knew Sherman. My old band used to play shows with Spirit Caravan and Hidden Hand all the time and stuff. So I was pretty bummed about it.
Yeah, it was so sudden. I mean, I haven't really looked into the specifics, but it's just a shame that because he was such a nice dude. I got to meet him up at the Doomfest a few years ago, and
awesome.
It seems like the scene around there is very close knit because it's like when I mention one person, they'll usually mention somebody else, and it's a guy in another band, and it's like kind of a family tree in a way with you guys. So I think that's what surprised me is your style of music is so much different than the typical Maryland doom, and so I thought it was so kind of funny and appropriate that there was overlap between the psychedelic and the doom metal scene up there.
Yeah, totally. I think it's weird. I kind of had an end to that scene because of my old band. We had the band was called Meat Jack, and we had definitely some doomier parts to it. We're definitely Sabbath influenced and a lot of other metal bands and stuff. And so I think that's how I kind of made my way into that scene. And then after I started my own solo project, I still knew all these people from that scene. And then even though the music was a little different, it fit close enough, I think, because of the guitar and just, sometimes some of the riffs I would play. Mm-hmm. So it was really, really interesting. Some of the places where we've been able to, put our little mark on, which is interesting, like the tour with Wino or whatever. And and play with some of these heavier bands. We just played a metal fest last weekend here called the Shadow Woods, and that's kind of like a big thing. There's like there's a very big kind of metal scene of all sorts of genres, kind of in the Maryland, Baltimore, DC area, I feel.
Yeah. I feel like that, if somebody really wanted to, they could do sort of an interesting like history of Maryland doom in some way. I feel like that would actually be a pretty intricate book if you really started diving deep.
Totally. And it will happen one day. Somebody will make one, I don't doubt.
So, when do you guys start on your tour? Is it Wednesday?
Wednesday, we start the first show in Roanoke.
Okay. Yep. All right. So how many cities are you going to be hitting?
I just counted it up. I believe it's 22 cities. And yeah, Winston-Salem's kind of at the tail end of the tour when we start to make our way. We're kind of going down through like Virginia, Tennessee, Arkansas, into Texas, and then we work our way, along the bottom back through Louisiana, and then coming up the coast, into Georgia and South Carolina. And then so I think the show in Winston-Salem, I believe, is on a Friday, and the tour actually ends on the last show of the tour is Sunday. So it's kind of the last, one of the last shows we're going to do. It also happens to be Halloween weekend because Halloween's on a Monday this year, and this is the Friday before Halloween. So that should be a lot of fun too. And we have a very special Halloween costume planned for those Halloween shows, the shows close to Halloween. So that should be a lot of fun too.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to that. It's always fun when there's a little surprise to look forward to.
Yeah,
we have a really good costume for those in the know of that movie 2001.
Oh man.
But not everyone see that. We're old.
I know. We're gonna be.
It should be required viewing.
It should be, but
to be a junior.
It's becoming less and less of a reference point as I get older. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I get it.
It's super weird. But as a kid, the California Raisins would reference 2001. Everybody was referencing that movie.
But it should be an interesting enough costume, though, that we won't be able to actually play our set with the costume.
But we could probably walk on stage.
We'll be walking around all night with them on. Bumping into people.
That'll be awesome, especially, because the Monstercade's, a nice little intimate venue. It shouldn't be hard to bump into anybody.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. I'll be impressed if the costume makes it through the weekend. Which is the goal, honestly.
Right.
You know, it's a good Halloween if you destroy your costume.
Well, that's awesome, man. There was another thing I did want to ask you guys as well. Have you ever entertained the idea of putting vocals, or do you prefer the sound just to kind of be the thing that, does the talking for you?
Well, we got voices, but yeah, we never have a lot of
We don't have true lyrics often, although we are working on a couple songs for this new album that have
very minimal lyrics.
One has very minimal but very suggestive lyrics.
Oh, that's fun.
And then I think we're working on this will be for a future album, but because we live in a city and even though we have a love-hate relationship with municipal things, I think there's going to be a very lyric-heavy song about life in the city at some point.
Yeah. So there's no, originally Darsombra started out sort of soundtracky, ambient, soundscapey. But there is, every now and then there'll be voices, but usually a lot of times they're just chanting nonsense or they're just singing a note or something which will then loop and play over that. So maybe someday in the future there might be, but we never say never. Mm-hmm. But there's no plans, but definitely I feel like with Call the Doctor, that's the most singing we've ever put in a Darsombra song, and even then it's mostly repeated Call the Doctor over and over again, and then some some kind of singing, but no actual lyrics or anything.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I looked at it. It was like I heard I can hear the voice, but it feels more like it's really part of the music instead of distinct from the music.
Exactly, and that's kind of on purpose too. Every now and then somebody will say, a sound engineer will say, turn the voices up or make the voices louder, and I'm like, oh no, they're not. They're not supposed to be over the music. They're supposed to be with the music. You know, they're part of it. They're like another instrument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And well, you know, I've always found any kind of music that is composed without vocals, to me, it's fascinating when people like yourself can write something where it's almost like the hook is the music itself, where you find yourself humming the hook just as much as you would be humming a lyric. Yeah. And that seems like a particularly tough challenge. I mean, is it hard for you guys to do, or does it just come naturally?
I think, you know, I guess it is a little bit of a challenge, but it does kind of just come naturally because I'm hugely influenced by what I consider to be very lyrical guitar players, and like one of my prime examples would be like David Gilmour. I feel like he's composed some guitar solos that you could actually hum or get the melodies of them like stuck in your head because they're almost as important as the vocal melody lines. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I like, a good riff that can get stuck in your head even if it's doesn't have lyrics accompanying it. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, but also comes kind of naturally a little bit. Yeah. It seems like one of those things that you would have to have sort of a natural ability to do, just because I think people kind of take for granted how much vocals tend to be an important part of a song structure. So when you're able to remove something and still make it that kind of all-encompassing vibe, that it's always impressed me. That's why I love bands. Like I just recently got into have you ever heard of a band called Russian Circles? Oh yeah.
They're great.
Their new album has blown my fucking mind, and it's like there's not one word on it, but I'll be running around humming those riffs all day long.
That's awesome. Yeah, awesome. I know I'm very familiar with the band name Russian Circles, but I guess I never knew they were an instrumental band.
I didn't either until this year. I was listening to I think a Pelican album or something.
Yeah, no, I remember Pelican, and I know they were definitely instrumental.
Oh yeah. They're another one of those bands. They write hummable hooks, So I mean, all of you guys are in good company as far as I'm concerned. You're all very. You make my ears happy. I'll say that.
Awesome. Good to hear.
Well, thank you.
So, okay, so you guys are going to be playing on Halloween. You're going to be dressing up in costumes, and then how much further do you think you'll be once you leave the tour? You're probably going to be going back to work on this album. Do you have kind of a time frame of when you think you may have the album completed?
I want it to be done yesterday.
Yeah, I know. We've been dragging our feet on it.
We like to take 5 times longer to do anything because we're both like complete OCD, fussy, picky artists. And we want it to be 100% perfect and then more perfect than that.
Yeah, and so we wrote what happened was...
And we self-release, so...
Yeah, and we self-release.
I'm not waiting on the label to say, get it done!
Right. We've worked with many, many different labels, really good labels in the past, but with the Transmission album and with the Call the Doctor EP, we just decided to self-release them just because we just thought we tour so much, we're the ones moving most of the units, so we just figured cut out the middleman and make a little more money on the tail end, as long as we have the money to invest in at the beginning, which, luckily at the time we did. But that is the plan. We when the pandemic hit and we all of a sudden found ourselves not being able to go anywhere, from about mid-March to about mid-June, we wrote so much material that at some point I had to kind of stop our jam sessions and just be like, look, we need to now go through this material and turn it into stuff. I think we got an album or 2 out of this. Mm-hmm. And so, we're slowly working our way through what we hope to be a double record. And we're kind of making a point to not do much of anything after this tour so that we can hopefully finish the rest of it, because we're only about the halfway point of just sort of cleaning it all up and putting it all out the way we need it to be. So that is the plan after this, is to try to get the album out there. And then, it's going to even take a while from then if we want to, at least if we want to press it on vinyl. There seems to be it seems like it's like everyone tells me, if you put in an order for vinyl now, it's like a year till you'll get it back, because apparently there's a giant backlog of and I guess not enough pressing plants or something. So
yeah, I've actually I have a little online vinyl store, and that's something I've been bitching about since last year. Is all these major labels. It was like they were kind of putting their toes in the water a little bit and pressing some major artists and whatnot, and then it seemed like out of nowhere, every major label was like, let's press 9 billion copies of Taylor Swift and Adele. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you're running a printing plant or a pressing plant, you're of course going to take that money. Why wouldn't you? But it's like, man, at the same time, they really kind of fucked over a lot of underground artists who, frankly, it's like, time is really important for musicians just as much as money. And that's some bullshit. That drives me crazy.
Oh, I know. But, it's funny. It's worse now, but it's always been that way, because I remember even pressing my first vinyl record back in the mid-'90s, and the label we were working with at the time kind of telling us how it was. Like, well, they won't really tell you exactly how long it's going to take, because if whatever Nirvana decides to come along and decide that they need 1 million copies, they're going to push your job to the back.
Oh, yeah.
And press shit first. And so we were like, oh, okay. So, but now it's gotten, it seems like it's gotten much, much worse. But, whatever. I mean, we'll still put it out probably on vinyl at some point, I imagine. And definitely on CD. That's the weirdest thing that's happened this year, is we're starting to see CDs coming back.
I know. So, isn't that bizarre?
Which is okay to me, because I'm like, well, that's the quickest turnaround time when you have to manufacture them, and the cheapest out of all the available options currently. Because I know cassettes started to make a little bit of a comeback as well, but I feel like it's still even cheaper to press CDs than cassettes even,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, cassettes were such a pain in the ass format. I was surprised there was any traction, whatsoever.
I know. I couldn't believe they came back.
I know. Well, it's funny. I think because that used to be the only way I'd listen to music, and to this day, I've still got songs that I hear, but I'm expecting, because I did so much rewinding and fast forwarding, that it's like I'm expecting to hear the tail end of the song that came before it, and that's in my head, and then the song I want to hear actually plays. I can't get rid of that. It's stuck in my brain forever.
Yeah, I get that.
So yeah, I was not wild when they were like, yeah, tapes. I was like, oh, nah, fuck a bunch of tapes, man. I'm not going back.
We weren't so, we didn't think quite that way. We made some cassettes because we thought, well, the market's there. Mm-hmm. And people have been buying them, but they're not. They're still behind both CDs and vinyl, as far as I'm concerned, as far as how they're moving on the table.
yeah, I know, and I shouldn't talk so much shit about them, because I carry a bunch of cassettes on my website, so I should actually probably shut my dumb mouth. But yeah, I'm really impressed that CDs are coming back. I think it's and I mean that's cool, because you guys would be able to press it and get it out there faster if that was the case.
Yeah, and I know a lot of other bands are doing this thing now where they release their album like a few tracks at a time digitally, and then at the end of that, they follow it up with like a physical release, and that's something that's probably going to end up being how we end up putting out some stuff in the future, I imagine.
Well, it probably is a lot easier and probably takes the edge off, creatively for a lot of bands, that you don't have to be like, okay, I got to put 12 songs on here. You can be like, oh no, I can just write these 3 that I really enjoy and, fire it out on a 7-inch or something.
Yeah, totally. I remember when there was a song called Nymphaea an older Darsombra track that I was really excited about when I had finally written it, that I was like, there's no way, and it was only like 7 minutes long, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to wait around until I have another 30 minutes of material to put this out. I'm putting it out right now. And that's what I did. And, I thought that I loved the immediacy of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I heard that that's sort of the direction that Weird Al Yankovic's going, where I think he's starting to just release singles, because it's a lot more timely for what he does. And so it takes the pressure off of having to come up with an album's worth of material where half of it might not even be relevant by the time it comes back out.
Yes, totally. I love that. I love to hear that.
Yeah. I'm kind of a Weird Al nerd, so it's eventually he's going to pop up in conversation for me. So that I probably should look into getting some help about that. It's kind of a weird obsession to have.
That's great. I love that.
Well, is there anything? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just remember was Weird Al, was he in the Sparks documentary? Yeah, I think he was, right? Yeah.
What's the Sparks documentary? What is that?
There's this really amazing band from the 70s, but they're still active today. I mean, they're just as big as ever. They just released a new album, and then a musical that was based on their music. Anyway, amazing band called Sparks, two brothers, and several lineup changes and many stylistic changes from the mid-70s to now. And but it was a great documentary, came out about them a couple of years ago, and Weird Al was one of the people in the documentary talking about how much he loved Sparks, and also saying that he feels they never quite got the shot that they should have gotten because they have a lot of humor in their music, and he feels that there's like this sort of backlash from a whole certain segment of music fans about funny music or music with humor in it, So
Mm-hmm.
I think there'll be a whole group of people that'll just automatically dismiss it as like, whatever, some kind of novelty bullshit or something. And so he was there championing the band Sparks and other bands that decided to use, humor as part of their
Yeah, like as part of what they do in general.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a shame that people are. I mean, it is what it is, but it's a shame that people kind of close off from that when, just this one little facet of the music is not good for them, so therefore they're going to reject it wholesale. And it's like, that's kind of a bummer. You probably missed out on something you would have really enjoyed.
Yeah, sure, totally. And I like humor in music. I think it was Frank Zappa who said, "Does humor belong in music?" Because there was a whole bunch of people that would kind of give him crap too, and other people because they're like, "Oh, it's just comedy. It's just comedy crap. It's just comedy music." It's like, no, there's room for this.
Yeah.
There's comedy films. What's wrong with that?
I know, right? Well, guys, I will let you go. I don't want to take up all your time today, but could you let everybody listening know where to, find your socials, website, pick up the music, all the good stuff that they can do to support you?
Yeah, we're on everything. So we're everywhere. We got Darsombra.com is the kind of the one-stop shop for everything because everything launches from there. But we're on Facebook, we're on Spotify, we have a YouTube channel, we got Instagram.
Honestly, if you go out into the middle of the street and shout Darsombra, you'll probably find a web result.
I'll give that one a try later on, so I hope you guys can, give me some bail money when they come to arrest me.
Right. It'll just swoop in like Batman and Robin. Now the question is, which one of us is Batman? Which one is Robin?
That's the question for the ages, isn't it?
I know. We'll leave you with that.
Well, maybe that'll be the costume, and we can find out on the concert at the end of the month.
That would be a really good Halloween costume.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to coming out and see you. I will.
Meeting you.
Yeah, I'll completely bother you. I'll try not to. I'll try to do it before I start getting beers in me, and then after that, I can get annoying, so I won't do that.
Don't worry, you can bother the hell out of us. One of us will be jumping around like an ape, and the other will be bumping into things.
Okay. All right. Well, then I can get along with that. That's perfectly fine. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Piedmont Triad Podcast. I'd like to thank Brian and Ann for taking the time to chat with us. Make sure to go and check out Call the Doctor /Night Garden on all of the streaming platforms, including their Bandcamp page. And make sure you go to Darsombra.com to find out all about their tour dates this month, as well as all of their social media platforms. And if you are in the Piedmont Triad area, make sure you go see them live at the Monstercade in Winston-Salem on October 28th. Again, a big thanks to Matt Smith and the Cowboy Spankers for letting us use their tune Not Tonight as our theme music. Make sure to go to their Bandcamp page and check their music out. And again, a big thanks to my friend and artist Brian Falk for all of our logo artwork. And a big thanks to you for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the Piedmont Triad Podcast and leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever the hell you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at Piedmont Podcast or Facebook at Piedmont Triad Podcast. Also, be sure to check out heavy-vinyl.com, our online rock and metal vinyl website where you can grab new metal and rock vinyl releases, as well as catch up on all of our Piedmont Triad podcast episodes, as well as our sister podcast, the Rock God Podcast. Until next time, Triad.
She keep on moving. You're like the devil when the sun goes down. Stay away from me. Well, I'm too far gone. There ain't nothing here to see, babe. So you best just move.